everyone. Happy spring break. This video I'm going to look at and walk through paper 3, comparison contrast. I graded everybody's second paper that turned it in on Blackboard. Everyone did a really great job for the most part. So if you guys who are turning in the work and doing all that stuff, everyone's doing really well. If you're missing work, please reach out to me and we can work on something to fix that. So, all right, comparison contrast. If you've noticed as well too, our assignments are getting a little trickier. I mean, some people did really well with the item, and other people had to struggle getting to the full 3 pages. We're halfway done with the semester, and these last 2 papers are we're going to be doing a couple different things with them, different from the first two. So, paper 3, comparison contrast. If you go to our assignments, and there it is. It's up there. Paper 3, comparison contrast. So I'm going to pull this up and walk through it. Paper 3, comparison contrast. And here are the page numbers that it alludes to. I'm going to have another video uploaded after this one where I walk through the page numbers. I changed the due date from the syllabus and the weekly session. So make sure you noted that this paper is due Tuesday, March 23rd. We have a couple weeks, plenty of time to do this. So I moved it back though because we're a little behind. So we'll work on this paper, and then after this is done, we'll work on the final paper, and then that's it for the class. Everything's the same MLA format. You guys know that song and dance. The grading, everything's the same except for I have a new caveat on here. You gotta get to at least 3 full pages. So I know some folks really struggle getting to the 3 full pages for the second paper. You got to get to 3 full pages. And I want each person to include one subject by subject body paragraph and one point by point paragraph. And I'm going to talk about those when I look at the page numbers for the next video. So I'll discuss these in detail. For this assignment, you will write a 3-page paper that compares and contrasts something. According to our reading, when we compare 2 things, we show how they are similar. When we contrast 2 things, we show how they are different. That's basically what we're doing. I have some ideas that I mentioned here, and also at the bottom of this paper. Again, if we were meeting in person or online, we would spend most of this class brainstorming ideas. But you can get the picture of it, and if anyone is really struggling with coming up what to compare and contrast, please reach out to me. See, these assignments now, we're kind of getting away from the personal, remember when, the story, the education, and the thing, and we're kind of getting outside of ourselves a little bit. Some initial ideas I have: we can compare and contrast 2 movies, 2 television shows, 2 brand name products, 2 cars, 2 solutions to a problem we are facing, 2 video games, two musicians or 2 albums or 2 songs, 2 restaurants, 2 figures from sports, etc. These are just a few initial ideas to think about, right? I mean, you're not limited to these things. You could pretty much think of whatever you want. One thing though, I want you to be specific. And I want you to kind of choose which one you're kind of arguing for one over the other in a sense. So take a category, like look at movies. And I have this at the bottom as well, but if you focus on movies or anything with the arts like television shows, movies, music, video games, I want you to choose 2 movies from the same genre, right? Like if you like scaries, you could look at Halloween versus Nightmare on Elm Street, or Nightmare on Elm Street versus Friday the 13th, or The Conjuring versus Insidious, something like that, right? You wouldn't want to compare Nightmare on Elm Street to The Lion King. There's no, right? It doesn't make sense. Movies as well, you can compare Disney princesses or Disney flicks or comedies or drama or thriller or romance, anything like that. Similarly with television shows, what's hot now? Everyone's watching The Office now, so you could do like The Office versus another sitcom, or you could do 2 reality shows. Think of 2 reality shows, 2 dramas, but you wouldn't want to compare like Sopranos to Friends, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. Sopranos versus The Wire, Friends versus Seinfeld's an old one. But two television shows, think of reality shows. If you watch those, you can compare and contrast. Two brand name products. What do we all use every day? Phones. iPhone versus the Droid or whatever or computers, right? Mac versus HP. Or products. I had a student before compare Nike brand versus Adidas. So think of two brand name products. Also, I had a student in the past write a really good paper comparing, contrasting brand name makeup versus generic makeup. So think of products like that. Think of products. Think of things we use every day. Two cars, you can compare two cars, right? Two solutions to a problem, two video games. Similarly, with the two video games, you would compare, Call of Duty versus another first person game. You wouldn't do Call of Duty versus Madden football, right? Something like that. You would want to choose two similar things. Two musicians, likewise. Biggie versus Tupac could work. Stones versus the Beatles, right? You wouldn't want to compare Beethoven versus MC Hammer. So I had a student before write a paper on Whitney Houston versus Mariah Carey. Two singers, right? So that would be really good. Two restaurants you can compare. Another thing you could do the good old fashioned like Target versus Walmart, right? Compare and contrast Target versus Walmart. Two figures from sports, obviously LeBron versus Jordan, Jordan versus Kobe, Kobe versus LeBron, any of those things. I don't want you to stick with the same sport though. I had a student in the past as well, compare and contrast. Messi versus Ronaldo, right? You wouldn't want to, Brady versus Montana. Think of sports, something in sports. So those are just a couple things, but take one of these categories and narrow it down. The goal of this assignment is to critically compare and contrast our chosen objects through close reading and attention. Our project will be based on specific evidence developed through the writing process. Use the practices we developed in the first and second papers to describe and examine. So, even though the topic's different, the practices we use in the first couple papers will follow suit. There's the structure, same thing like that. Subject by subject paragraph. And it specifically talks about that on page 306 to 307 in our reading, which again I'm going to look at in the next video. A subject by subject paragraph focuses on one subject in the first half of the paragraph and then moves to the second subject for the second half. The first half fully explains one side of the contrast and the second half deals with the other side. An example of this would be, and I'll pull this up later as well, say you're doing a comparison contrast of like Starbucks versus Dunkin', right? And you like Starbucks coffee more. The first half of that paragraph will describe why Starbucks coffee is good or better. You will have the topic sentence, right? Starbucks coffee is a higher quality and tastes better than Dunkin' Donuts. There's your main idea topic sentence. And then you would include 2 to 3 to 4 sentences describing Starbucks coffee, why it's better, higher quality, or whatever. And then the second half of the paragraph, you would talk about why Dunkin' Donuts coffee isn't as good. On the other hand, Dunkin' Donuts coffee is watered down or whatever, right? So that's an example. And again, I'm going to cover this in detail. Point by point paragraph makes a point for one subject and then immediately a point for the other subject. Each point could be a sentence or two. So if your next body paragraph, you're comparing, contrasting still Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, your topic sentence main idea could read something like, Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts have a different variety of food. Starbucks has these cake pops or whatever, whereas Dunkin' Donuts has munchkins. So in the subject by subject, you're looking at one thing first, Starbucks, and then the second half, Dunkin' Donuts. Here, a point about Starbucks, then a point about Dunkin' Donuts. And you would do that through the whole paragraph. So that's a quick rundown of this paper so far. This paper gets a little tricky. Like I said too, if we were meeting, we would spend the whole class brainstorming ideas, looking at things, because I have some thoughts, but I'm sure some other people will come up with different things. But here's what I want you to do, like we always do. Get out a piece of paper and a pencil or pen, or on your computer, start to type some ideas. What are the first things that come to your mind to compare and contrast? Why did you choose these things? Start to write specific similarities and go on to write differences. Which one do you like more? Which one's better? Feel free to make 2 columns that say similarities and differences. Here I have a few ideas. Take any of the ideas mentioned above and be specific. Or think of something that is not mentioned above. When I had some wrestling fans before wrestling, like WWE versus the other wrestling thing, whatever it is. Again, Dunkin' versus Starbucks works. Or you could do like Starbucks versus Honeydew, Dunkin' versus Honeydew, any of that stuff. Or you can even do a chain coffee shop versus independent coffee shop, right? Like a mom and pop coffee shop. So that's one aspect you could look at, and really you can really jump in and start describing the differences, similarities, and also which one you like more. Here's a big one I think would work: remote learning versus in-person learning. So if a lot of you have been to college before in person, you could compare and contrast to that now because we're all remote right now, right? Or even if you haven't, even if you've been to college online, you can compare and contrast that to your previous learning experiences. Which one do you like more? Which is better? Personally, I like in person more. I think we get more in person. Focus, concentration, we're all there together, working together. However, remote learning might be more beneficial for people if you got kids, if you got jobs to work. You could just roll out of bed, or you can multitask and put the good old computer on. However, I think you lose a little bit something there, a little something there. Online shopping versus in-person shopping. What are the pros and cons of that, and which one do you prefer? You make a list, right? LeBron versus Jordan. For the sports folks out there, think of comparing, and I touch upon this above, 2 movies like Halloween versus Nightmare on Elm Street, for example, or 2 other movies. Aladdin, 2 Disney movies works. Again, though, when you choose the arts, make sure you choose to compare things from the same genre. I should be 2 rappers. That's a typo on me. 2 rappers, 2 country singers, rock and roll bands, folk singers. Singers, whatever. Madonna versus Lady Gaga would work. Again, you can't really compare Friday the 13th versus The Lion King. It doesn't make sense. These are just a few ideas to get thinking. Think of things that are specific, right? I mean, think of things that we use every day or do every day. Phones works, video games works, computers. College versus high school might work, right? How's college different from high school, right? I mean, you need to spend a lot more time working on things in college on your own. You don't have anyone nudging you along with that. So I don't want anyone, think of things that are specific. Again, I don't want anyone to choose, for example, like summer versus winter, right? I mean, it's too broad. One's hot, one's cold, right? I mean, you're outside in one, you're inside. Like, it's just too broad. Use a little more nuanced thinking and choose something like, my go-to would be like movies or shows or music or books even. That's a good one. Think of comparing, contrasting a book to a movie, right? Like Harry Potter books versus Harry Potter movies. What's the other big one? The Mockingjay. The one with that Susan Collins wrote, I think her name is. Hunger Games. Yeah, Hunger Games. Think of Hunger Games books versus movies. Or you can think of a movie remake versus a movie original. I had a student write about the old Halloween film, 78, the John Carpenter, versus the Rob Zombie Halloween. So, or, there's a lot of remakes now. That might be interesting. Include a series of movies. You can look at, like, the Jurassic Park series versus another series or something like that. But I just don't want anything like summer versus winter. It's just too broad, right? I mean, and use some nuanced thinking in this. And we're at about 14 minutes looking at this video. Write down some notes. If you have questions, concerns, comments, if you're completely stuck, email me and we'll figure out something together. I'll be posting another video in a few minutes about the pages. All right.